सहजानंद प्रगट सहजानंद
ओम भाग्य तणो नहीं पार पाम्या अखंड परमानंद
अखंड परमानंद अखंड परमानंद अखंड परमानंद
मळ्या प्रगट सहजानंद
मानो मળી છે મોટી વાત માનો મળી છે મોટી વાત હાથ આવી તેમ હાથ જોરે કરી જતન દિવસ રાત સુતા બેઠા એ સંભાર જોરે સાચો મળ્યો છે સત્સંગ અંગે અચળ કરી રાખ જોરે રખે ચડે બીજાનો રંગ એવું ડાપણ દૂર નાખ જોરે લઈ બેઠા છો મોટો લાભ પૂરણ બ્રહ્મને રે નહીં તો દુઃખનો ઉગત ડાભ માની લેજો એ મર્મને રે આજ પામ્યા છો આનંદ વામ્યા दारुण दुख ने रे एम कहे निष्कुड़ानंद रखे मुक्ता एवा सुख ने रखे मुक्ता एवा सुख ने रे घणा मोंघा जे घनश्याम नावे नजर न मळे कोई ने रे अक्षरवासी आठो जाम जेने रया छे अखंड जोईने रे अति थईने दिनाधीन नित्य नमावे छे शिष्यने रे लगनी लगाड़ी ले लीन जोई रया छे जगदीश ने रे एवा मुक्त ने मळवा काज मोटा इच्छे छे मन मारे शिव ब्रह्मा ने सुरराज ते तो तल से छे तन मारे एवा देवताना दर्शन थाता नथी थोड़ी वात मारे निष्कुळानंद विचारो मान आवो रहस्य बेसी एकांत मारे
In 2017, two young men left their lives in Mumbai to study in Australia. No friends, no acquaintances. They worked odd jobs just to make ends meet. They were lonely. Overwhelmed at this point, they started thinking about going back home. One of them recalled going to a sabha at the BAPS Mandir in Dadar, Mumbai, and came to know that there was a local BAPS sabha in Geelong, Victoria. He decided to attend one weekend, knowing this was a good chance to at least have a warm meal. At the end of Sabha, a few Hari Bhaktos, including one named Chandrakant Bhai, met with the new Yuvaks to help them feel more welcome. A few weeks later, Chandrakant Bhai arranged a Sant Padharmi at this Yuvak's apartment. The Pujya Santos asked him about their food arrangements. The Yuvaks revealed that for the last 3 months, all they had eaten was khichdi, and that whoever came home from work first had the honor of preparing it. Chandrakant Bhai overheard the Yuvak's difficulties, and for the next year and a half, he prepared a full meal for them every single day. Chandrakant Bhai was familiar with Yogi Bapa's sentiment, "Ke yuvako maru hriday chhe." On one occasion, when the Yuvaks asked how they can repay the cost of groceries, Chandrakant Bhai got upset and told the Yuvaks that koi divas avu mane puchta nahi. He took the opportunity to practice Surad Bhav, something he knew was so close to his Guru Pujya Mahan Sai Maharaj's heart. Motivated by Swami Shri Rajipo, he did this seva lovingly, with no expectations. Those Yuvaks who came to one sabha for a warm meal were transformed by the power of Surad Bhav. Today, they attend Ravi Sabhas, Para Sabhas, and do seva weekly. Surely prasangs like this do not occur outside of our Guru's knowing. In this next presentation, we will see how perceptive Param Pujya Mahant Swami Maharaj is, even to the most subtle moments of Surad Bhav that occur around him. Let us request Pujya Viratswaroop Swami to share with us the story of Swami Shri's 2018 Vichran to Australia and New Zealand. Pujya Viratswaroop Swami does seva at the North American headquarters. He received Diksha in 2004 and has been blessed with many close encounters with the Satpurush. Pujya Viratswaroop Swami.
श्री स्वामीनारायण भगवाननी जय, अक्षर पुरुषोत्तम महाराजनी जय, गुणातीतानंद स्वामी महाराजनी जय, भगत जी महाराजनी जय, शास्त्री जी महाराजनी जय, योगी जी महाराजनी जय, प्रमुख स्वामी महाराजनी जय, महंत स्वामी महाराजनी जय. In 2018, Mahant Swami Maharaj embarked on a tour of Australia, New Zealand and the Far East, ending his 2-year Vicharan to all BAPS mandirs and centers around the world. On February 3rd of that year, the night before Swami Shri's departure, Santo had gathered in his room and took the opportunity to ask Swami Shri what he wanted to name this final leg of his international Vicharan. Several suggestions were given, and then Swami Shri quietly said, Surad Yatra. Indeed, throughout the 3 months of this Yatra, we were able to see the incredible Suradabhav Swami Shri has for his Santo, his Hari Bhakto and well-wishers. And from his example, we can learn how to imbibe that Suradaparnu in our lives through understanding the Mahima of Satpurush and the Mahima of his Hari Bhakto. Gunatitananda Swami in his Vato, section 3, number 17 has explained કે ચાર વાત જીવનું જીવન છે: આજ્ઞા, ઉપાસના, એકાંતિકમાં પ્રીતિ અને ભગવદી સાથે સુરદપણું. 4 concepts that are the cornerstone of our faith. In explaining this vat, Yogiji Maharaj used to say that if we keep that last principle, Bhagavati Sate Suradapanu, then automatically we will realize the 3 remaining principles in our life. That is the power of Suradabhav. That is the power of serving our fellow satsangis with Mahima to nourish brotherhood, respect and unity. Thus, if we are able to imbibe the Suradaparnu that we can see in Swami Shri's life, then we too can learn how to live in a spirit of Suradaparnu, understanding the Mahima of all through the Mahima of Satpurush. Now, as we admire a photo of Swami Shri laying his divine drashti on a map of Australia, a photo taken in the Sant Ashram while Swami Shri toured our mandir in Sydney, let's recall how Yogi Ji Maharaj had sown the seeds of satsang for this part of the world more than 5 decades ago. While in Gondal, a Nishtavan satsangi mother from Africa sent her young son to ask Yogi Ji Maharaj where their family should settle and establish their life, having opportunities in England and Australia, etc. Yogi Ji Maharaj gave that young boy an agna for his family to settle in Australia. Now keep in mind, at that time, there was no satsang in Australia. Indeed, there were few, if any, Indians on the continent. Immigration had only recently begun there, but with Swami Shri's agna, the family settled in Melbourne. That young boy is now one of our leading Hari Bhakto in Australia and a trustee of the organization, Sitesh Bhai Bojani. In this photograph, Sitesh Bhai is getting Ashirvad from Swami Shri as Swami Shri begins his travels from Singapore to Melbourne on Singapore Airlines. It is a symbolic moment, as that young boy who had gotten Ashirvad from Yogi Bapa so many decades ago was now escorting that same Yogi Ji Maharaj in the form of Mahant Swami Maharaj to Australia. Now, even though Yogi Bapa sowed the seeds of satsang in the late 1960s, the number of Indians or Hindus in the country were minuscule. However, over the 70s, 80s, and especially the 90s, those numbers began to grow. Param Puja Pramukh Swami Maharaj made his first trip to Australia in 1988 to expand satsang and visit the Bojani family in Melbourne. He returned again in 1996 and then again in 2002 when he inaugurated mandirs in Perth and Sydney as well as in Auckland, New Zealand. Satsang was still very much in its infancy, but with the regular return of Santo, it continued to grow. Mahant Swami, then a Sadguru Sant, visited in 2003 and thereafter Pramukh Swami Maharaj assigned Puja Gnanpuru Swami, whom we all know as Ruda Swami, to oversee satsang development there. For 10 years, he and his companion Sant traveled tirelessly a satsang region larger than anywhere else on the planet, a region that included Southeast Asia, Fiji, Australia, and New Zealand. With Puja Ruda Swami's guidance and efforts, satsang grew with new mandirs being established in Melbourne and Brisbane and Adelaide in Australia, as well as 3 more mandirs in New Zealand. Mahant Swami returned in 2015 to inaugurate the Adelaide Temple and travel throughout the region. By that time, with Pramukh Swami Maharaj's Agna, Puja Param Chintan Swami was assigned to oversee Satsang Purruti in Australia and New Zealand, along with Puja Priya Chintan Swami. Currently, a total of 6 Santo traveled throughout these 2 countries. Santo's return continues to be incredible. Traveling from Perth to Auckland takes 9 hours by flight. What's more, in 2015, Mahant Swami gave an Agna to start searching for land for a Shikharbad Mandir in Sydney. It was a bold move at that time. But the Hari Bhakta responded to Swami's Agna with enthusiasm, obtaining an ideal piece of land in record time and offering it to Param Puja Pramukh Swami Maharaj in late 2015. Today, satsang continues to spread across Australia and New Zealand with 12 mandirs across both countries, 2 more mandirs under construction, and the Shikharbad Mandir complex in Sydney moving forward. Now, during today's Smriti of Mahant Swami Maharaj's Shrud Yatra in 2018, as we watch the Satpurush symbolically bowing to satsang and his Hari Bhakta in Australia and New Zealand, let us reflect on a Shrud Bhav and its importance in winning a permanent place in Satpurush's heart. In this photo, you see Swami Shri meeting Craig Ondarchi, a Member of Parliament for the state of Victoria. Craig is a good friend of BAPS, having regularly visited our mandir in Melbourne. Indeed, when our Hari Bhakta were looking for a suitable place to host Swami Shri during his 7 days in Melbourne, it became clear that our Hari Mandir there would not be able to support the thousands of people who would be coming daily for darshan and satsang. Learning of this dilemma, Craig reached out to business leaders in the community and was able to help the mandal obtain a piece of land temporarily where a marquee could be built, along with a small-scale nagar, with exhibitions, a small mandir, gardens, dining tents, etc. Not only did Craig do this in Seva, the business leader he connected with offered this piece of land at no cost, along with a fleet of cars from his dealership in Seva. Craig's Seva Bhavna was akin to a true selfless bhakta, allowing the Melbourne Mandal to host Swami Shri in the best way possible. And once Swami Shri arrived, on the first morning of his puja, Craig was there, even at that early hour. After puja, Craig was asked to come on stage to place a har on Swami Shri to welcome him to Melbourne. Swami Shri, having learned of his seva and his Shrud Bhav for satsang, told Craig as they met on stage that he would like to visit Craig's office for a padramani. Craig was taken aback and overjoyed, and on his way back to his Uttaro, delaying his breakfast and indeed his schedule for the day, Swami Shri stopped at Craig's office. This photo is of Swami Shri arriving at the office and Craig bowing down to touch Swami's feet. After a brief tour of the office, Swami Shri tied a narachari on Craig and then sat with him in his meeting room. They discussed his work as a public servant, and Swami Shri gave the MP Ashirvad so that he may continue this seva for years to come. Craig was overwhelmed by Swami Shri's grace and love. At the end, Swami Shri departed after giving him Ashirvad again so that he may continue his seva of the public. But fundamentally, you can see Swami Shri's bhavna, his care and mahima for someone who doesn't outwardly appear to be a satsangi. The fact that Craig offered his seva for our Hari Bhakta led Swami Shri to change his schedule and perform a padramani at his office. That bhavna, that Shrud Bhav, for those that offered their seva to the sanstha and to satsang, can also be seen in this photo. While in Sydney, Swami Shri visited the site of the future Shikharbad Mandir to do Bhumi Pujan. It was an historic day for satsang in Australia. In the midst of the day's various programs, a Vietnamese farmer named Kenny, who farmed the land next to ours, came to see what was happening. Now he had known that the spiritual leader of the organization building the temple here was coming to the site. So when he came to see what was happening, he brought a box of dragon fruit as bait. He also offered $1,000 in seva. Learning of this, Swami Shri was extremely pleased. Now in the grand scheme of things, the amount was nominal. But it was Kenny's bhavna that touched Swami Shri, his wish to do some small seva for this satsang. After he offered his seva, Swami Shri gave him Ashirvad and told the assembled Haribhakto and Santo that this farmer is a modern-day Dubli Bhatt from Bhagwan Swaminarayan's time. We all know the story of Dubli Bhatt offering 13 pennies for the building of Gadada Mandir. When Bhagwan Swaminarayan heard his seva, Maharaj said the Jai, indicating that the fundraising was complete, but actually teaching us that when even the most ordinary of our Haribhakto give all that they have because of their Mahima and Suradapana for satsang, then the true work of Satpurush is done. As I mentioned, Swami Shri was quite pleased visiting the site of the future Mandir, meeting the Haribhakto assembled there for Bhumi Pujan, completing the Bhumi Pujan, touring the entire site. In this photo, you can see Swami Shri happily pointing out that the three pieces the coconut broke into during the Pujan Vidhi signify the three shikhars of the Mandir. Indeed, the day's events were playing in Swami Shri's mind when he went to sleep in the evening. And then the next day, Swami Shri shared a dream he had had the previous night about the Mandir site. Swami Shri explained that he went to the site of the Mandir in his dream and took Pramukh Swami Maharaj with him to ask him what he thought of the land. Swami Shri explained that he felt he had to take Pramukh Swami there to show him the land because of Pramukh Swami's expertise in building so many mandirs around the world. Pramukh Swami Maharaj responded by saying that we must ask Shastriji Maharaj. So Mahant Swami explained that all Gunatit Gurus came with Shastriji Maharaj, Gunatitanand Swami, Bhagatji Maharaj, Yogiji Maharaj. He explained that all were quite pleased and that Shastriji Maharaj gave an agna, Kave Morcho Mando, meaning start the work. Now Swami Shri's Rajipo with Craig and Kenny show us how seva is integral to fostering Suradabhav. Swami Shri's effortless connection with his gurus show us that if we prioritize Suradabhav, we never have to feel alone in our endeavors. So now, we have seen Swami Shri's Suradabhav for individuals that have come into mere contact with satsang. But in Sydney and in Gold Coast, we had a glimpse into how Swami Shri sees his satsangis, his Haribhakta. While in Australia, Swami Shri spent the longest time in Sydney, where our largest mandal is, and where, as we have seen, the first Shikharbad Mandir in the region will be built. At the end of his stay in Sydney, a special volunteer appreciation sabha was held, where different departments shared inspiring prasangs of seva from across the mandal. Just as in Melbourne, the current Sydney Hari Mandir simply could not accommodate the logistical requirements and capacity that Swami Shri's stay in Sydney would require. Each morning and evening, 5,000 devotees would attend Puja Darshan and evening Sabha. As a result, Swami Shri's entire program was hosted at a convention center a few blocks away from our mandir. Swami Shri's Uttara was at the mandir where smaller programs such as Bhojan Darshan, Mulakat and walking were held. The logistics of managing a 14-day program at a convention center were no small task. But amidst those complex logistics, the process of providing prasad each day, 3 times a day, was truly unique. The kitchen for the Utsav was 45 minutes away at the site of our Shikharbad Mandir. Each day, a team of 15 volunteers would arrive at the site in the evening. Their seva would start the next day at 1 a.m., where preparations for meals of the day would start. The Karikars would then start making breakfast at 4 a.m. for the nearly 5,000 people who would come for Puja Darshan. Breakfast was ready by 5 a.m., packed up in large hot pots, strapped onto trolleys, and then loaded into vans for delivery. The breakfast would then arrive at the convention center by 6 a.m. As you can see in this photo, the process would be repeated for lunch and then again for dinner, with the seva ending late into the evening. In spite of these difficulties, the 120 Karikar kitchen team was able to serve 3 meals a day for 14 days to the thousands of Hari Bhaktos taking Swami Shri's lab. Now, even while doing this seva, many of the Karikars had taken special niyams and observances, including doing Bhagatji Maharaj Vrat, cycling 2 days of uppas followed by 1 day of parna. And this is just one department. There were so many volunteers required for managing the logistics of having multiple locations, from parking to sabha vyavastha, from stage programs to security, and each volunteer had a unique story of Sradhabhav and Samarpan. Many had given up their jobs. Many had real concerns and issues about their immigration processes. Yet they made Maharaj and Swami their focus and just did their seva. It was with this background that Swami Shri listened to the Volunteer Appreciation Sabha, having also heard many inspiring prasangs from Santo beforehand. And then at the end of the Sabha, the MC requested Swami Shri to share his blessings. Swami Shri's mic was set up, and after the Jainad, Swami Shri was silent for a few moments. And then he said, "Mare paase shabda nathi." I have no words. He was silent again, and then said, "Hua pelli var bolu chu." This is the first time I am saying such a thing. He went on to explain in his Ashirvad that our Sanstha is known for its volunteer spirit. But he said, I am at a loss for words because these volunteers have done their seva without looking to their personal situations, their financial situation, their immigration situation, their worldly future. Bapa kidu ke adar vagar seva kari che, meaning that they relied only on Bhagwan. Now, Swami Shri may not have had words for the Karikar seva in Sydney, but looking at this photo, we will all be lost for words. This is an historic photo, something that one would rarely see of a person with Swami Shri's stature. But this photo is a snapshot of our Guru's life and the way he sees us in a spirit of Suradaparnu. In this photo, Swami Shri is touching the feet of our Nishtavan Yuvak Kushal. Kushal's story is an inspiring one. He was born without sight. He's blind. Yet he has an enthusiasm for life and satsang that is rarely seen. Since his birth, Param Puja Pramukh Swami Maharaj has given him blessings and offered prayers for him. In spite of his physical handicap, Kushal has excelled at so many things and progressed in satsang. Once, when Santo were visiting his home for Padramani, they asked Kushal if he had ever thought about asking Swami Shri for his Ashirvad and blessings so that he may gain his sight. To this question, Kushal responded, "If Maharaj and Swami want me to see, then I will. Why should I pray for that? I rather pray for Swami Shri's health." That's his bhavna. That's his Suradhabhav. And indeed, whenever Santo go to Gold Coast, he is one of the first Hari Bhakta to come and greet us. Even though he cannot see, simply by touching your hand, he can remember who you are. And I've actually tested him on this, and without saying a word, he can recognize my name and say Jai Swaminarayan. He has learned Braille and learned the necessary life skills to be an independent, while also spending as much time progressing in satsang. He is also an excellent singer. Which takes us back to this photo. This photo was taken on Swami Shri's last day in Gold Coast. Swami Shri was to leave in the morning for Sydney. That morning there was no fixed program, and given that there are fewer Hari Bhakto in Gold Coast, the Mandal had come to the morning puja in Swami Shri's hotel to sing. Kushal was one of them. He had sung a kirtan during puja, with Swami Shri placing his drashti on him from time to time. At the end of puja, Swami Shri got up and was heading to his room for breakfast. But then Swami turned around and approached Kushal, who was standing with his father. Without saying a word, Swami Shri bowed down and touched Kushal's feet. Now Kushal didn't realize at first what was happening, but when his dad told him, he immediately bowed down to touch his Guru's feet and to stop Swami Shri. Still, as you can see in this photo quite clearly, Swami Shri bent down and touched Kushal's feet. Swami then gave him Ashirvad and returned to his room. Naturally, we were all stunned at what we just saw. The Santo asked Swami Shri, what just happened? Why did you touch Kushal's feet? Swami Shri's response was incredible. He said, look at his kef, look at his divya bhav. In spite of what he has experienced in life, he has so much utsa, so much love for satsang. Swami Shri's lack of words in Sydney and this picture are a snapshot of the mahima our Guru has for his satsangis, and indeed the mahima his satsangis have for their Guru, Shrud bhav. But what is the true mahima of our Guru, of the person you see here being able to touch the feet of his disciple? In this photo, Swami Shri is having lunch in a secluded spot on a golf course that surrounded the site of the Shibirs in Gold Coast. As Swami Shri began his lunch, a small bird came and sat on a tree right next to Swami Shri, as you can see in these photos, and it wouldn't move, as if it was doing darshan. Swami Shri began looking at the bird and then started saying something under his breath. The Sevak Sant sitting next to him told the rest of the Santo that Swami Shri Vartman Daravesh. To that, one Sant said, "Ke Brahmaji avya che darshan karva mate." Swami Shri chuckled at that and then softly said, "Kena bhagyama nathi." A simple, soft statement that tells us how incredible our prapti is, and indeed who this Satpurush is. The next day in Gold Coast, Swami Shri was taken to a house on a secluded beach for Swami Shri to visit the beach, bathe Thakurji, and spend time with Santo in an impromptu Sant Shibir. It was a special day, as these photos attest. Swami Shri came to the beach and did prarthna for the kalyan of all and for all who visited the beach. He watched as Santo swam in the ocean and then took Thakurji and bathed him in the ocean. Swami Shri himself even went up to his knees in the warm water. It was, as I mentioned, a special day. But in the evening, after Aarti, Swami Shri called the Santo together for Katha. Pujatma Swarup Swami asked Bapa that because we are on the coast of the deepest ocean in the world, the Pacific Ocean, as Puja Dr. Swami would say, go deep in your Ashirvad to us. And Swami Shri went straight to Prapti. He explained, we have attained something so unique in the form of Pragat Satpurush that simply nothing compares. He then laid out a simple example. He said that we can all understand that 11 is greater than 10. But this Prapti of Satpurush is not like that in comparison to the world. Rather, Swami Shri explained that this Prapti is like 1 with infinite zeros behind it being greater than 1. It is simply incalculable. And that Prapti was sitting before us. This is the Prapti that Swami Shri was talking about. It has become so easy, so available for us that sometimes we do not realize what we have. In remembering that true mahima of Satpurush, we will be able to keep the Shraddha Bhav that Swami Shri so easily lives in his life. And if we do imbibe Shraddha Parnu in our lives, understanding the mahima of Satpurush and understanding the mahima of his Hari Bhakta, Yogi Ji Maharaj has explained that we will realize the 4 principles of satsang that Gunatitananda Swami explained in his Vat. So let us offer our prayers today to Swami Shri that we may all strive to live up to the example he set for Shraddha Parnu in satsang and thus earn his Rajipo. Shri Swaminarayan Bhagwan Ani Jai.
ગુણાતીતાન સ્વામી પોતે જ વાત કરી છે કે આમને આમ સંપીને રહેશો તો મોટા મોટા દોષ કામ ક્રોધાદિ જે આખી દુનિયાને બ્રહ્માંડને ચટણી કરી નાખી છે એમાંથી ઉગરી જશો અને નહીં સંપીને નહીં રહો તો અલ્પ દોષ તમને સત્સંગમાંથી બહાર ફેંકી દેશે એ વાત સ્વામીએ કરી એટલે સંપની બહુ મોટી વાત છે. સંપ રાખીએ તો ઠેઠ મોક્ષ સુધી એમ જે ભગવાનના સંત જે કારણે આવ્યા છે પૃથ્વી ઉપર એ એમને સિદ્ધ કરાવી શકે. એટલે સંપની વાત રહી અને સંપમાં તો આપણે પોતે ઘસાવાનું છે. આપણે ચેરિટી બિગિન્સ એટ હોમ. પોતે બીજા પાસે અપેક્ષા રાખવાની જ નથી. એ સંપ રાખે તો હું રાખું, એ કોઈ વાત નહીં. મારે શું કરવું, મારા કેવા વિચારો કરવા, મારે કેવું વર્તન રાખવું, એ એના ઉપર જે આપણે જઈએ તો જ આપણને આ સંપની મજા આવે. અને બીજા પાસે અપેક્ષા રાખીએ તો ક્લેશ કંકાશ થાય અને સંપના ચૂરે ચૂરા થઈ જાય. ઊંધી લાઈન પકડી કહેવાય. તો અને સંપ માટે સ્વામિનારાયણ ભગવાન અને ગુણાતીતાનંદ સ્વામી, ભગતજી મહારાજ, શાસ્ત્રી મહારાજ, યોગી બાપા, પ્રમુખ સ્વામી મહારાજ એ કેટલા ઘસાયા છે અને પોતાને કેટલું બધું મૂક્યું છે, મન ધાર્યું મૂક્યું છે. પોતે જેના આપણે આજ્ઞાથી આગળ વધીએ પણ તો એ લોકો સમજ્યા નહીં તો મન ધાર્યું મૂકેલું છે. અને જો પ્રમુખ સ્વામી મહારાજ તો કહું CFI શિબિર વખતે કે ઝેર ખાઈને પણ સંપ રાખવું પડશે. તો એને આ એક જ લાઈન બધું સૂચવે છે કે એમને પોતે કેટલું સહન કર્યું હશે. તો સહન કરવાનું. અને જો યોગી બાપા પણ કહું કે મારે પૈસા નથી જોતા, સંપ જોઈએ છે. તો એ પણ બતાવે છે કે તે વખતે કેટલી હાડ મારી હતી પૈસાની. 2 આના પૈસા આવે તો રાજી થઈ જાય. પણ તે વખતે યોગી બાપાએ ખાસ કહું કે અમારે સંપ જોઈએ છે, પૈસા નથી જોતા. એટલે એ પણ બતાવે છે કે સંપ કેટલી અગત્યની વસ્તુ છે. શાસ્ત્રી મહારાજ, યોગી બાપા, એ તો આ બધા ગુરુએ અમલમાં મૂકેલું છે, ખાલી વાતો નથી કરી. એક રજે રજ અમલમાં મૂકેલું છે. અને આ સંપીને આ બધું આખું પરિવાર ઊભું કર્યું છે. એટલે આપણે પણ એમાં ભરી જવું અને કોઈ વાત બીજી કરવાની નહીં. સંપીને બધું કરીએ, હળીમળીને કરીએ, એકબીજાને મહિમા સમજીએ તો આ બધું કામ થાય.
In today's Sabha, Pujya Viratswaroop Swami shared some incredible moments from Mahant Swami Maharaj's Shrud Yatra in 2018. We learned that this Vichran to the Far East and Australia was replete with prasangs highlighting the Mahima Swami Shri had for his Santo and Hari Bhakto and anyone who offered their seva to satsang. Whether it be a spontaneous Padramani at the office of Craig on Dachi, paying homage to Kenny's heartfelt gesture, or bending to touch the feet of a disciple 65 years younger than himself, the Satpurush finds new ways to keep us in awe. Swami Shri is the source behind all of the Mahima in Satsang today. In Swami Shri, we have attained the most significant association in all of our collective existence. Yet, he is so humble that he basks in the Mahima of his own disciples. Let us strive for his dasbhav so that our life too can become a Shrud Yatra, one inspired by our Guru, filled with Mahima for all Santo and Hari Bhakto, and ultimately leading to Maharaj and Swami.